Well, that wasn't as eventful as I thought it'd be. What's going on, guys? It's been raining like crazy out here the last couple of days, and I haven't got a chance to get out and do much of anything until now. And it is getting dark, but I wanted to come out and do a 200 subscriber thank you video, just showing my appreciation for everybody that recently subscribed, as well as all the older folks that have been watching my channel for a while. Doesn't matter to me whether you're here for the old cars or the video games or what. I really appreciate you watching, and I'm not monetized, so it's not like I'm doing this for the money or anything. Anyhow, since I've got a decent little following going now, I figured I'd come out in the yard and give you guys a good look at my junk, show you some of my channel goals and stuff like that. I've got over a dozen old cars and trucks that I'm trying to do stuff to. Some of them run, in fact, more of them run than don't, and I've got titles for a majority of them. Alright, let's start off with this 79 Cutlass Calais here. It's halfway through a paint job. I got really busy last year when I was getting ready to paint the car and had to stop in the middle. You can see there's some overspray along the hood line and along the doors and stuff from where I've actually trimmed out the door jambs and stuff like that in the car. It's painted flat black under the hood and under the trunk area and everything. Unfortunately, there is no back glass in the car, but I do have one, thankfully. What happened to this thing is a tree fell on it about 20-30 years ago, something like that. And the people that the car belonged to decided to just pull it into their chicken coop. And obviously having no back window and also having the windows rolled down and the hood up with the air cleaner lid off, the thing didn't fare too well sitting in the chicken coop all that time. That's why there's absolutely no interior left in the car anymore. Yeah, she's full of leaves, but I had to rip all that stuff out, you know, the headliner and carpet and insulation. I was able to save the front seats. They're not really that bad, but the car just absolutely smelled completely rank like chicken shit. I've got floor mats on the seat here, so I don't really have to sit on it. But what makes this car rare is almost every Cutlass that you'll see from back in the late 70s is a 3-speed automatic car. Some of them were 4-speed automatics, the 6 cylinders, but this car has a pedal cluster. Excuse me, a clutch pedal cluster and a stick shift. It's a 5-speed Cutlass. And those they're not too common. Another weird thing the car's got is it has the round speedometer and the round tachometer and the 4 round gauges from the Monte Carlo SS instead of wide sweeping speedometer like most other Cutlasses have. This car runs great. It stops. Everything works good in it except for the clutch. Somebody tore the clutch out of it, probably whoever put the Kragers on it, and the glass pack muffler. I'm going to put a new clutch in the thing, obviously. It's got a little 260 V8 in it. It's a notoriously low power, low compression boat anchor. They get good gas mileage. I'm borrowing the radiator cap for something else right now. Did a lot of cleanup on the motor. The valve covers were almost perfect. The block didn't clean up too well. I don't know why there's such a drastic difference, but anywho, that's what's going on with this Cutlass. I'm planning on painting the thing flat black. As you can tell, that's why it's trimmed out in flat black. After I put a new clutch in it and maybe possibly do a Chevy swap, she'll have a lot more power and be a lot more cool. Anyway, let's move on to the next car. And here's the 1973 Ford Rustang. For those of you that are familiar with my channel, you already know that this car was given to me for free, which was absolutely amazing. You hardly ever have a 70s V8 muscle car given to you for free, especially one with a clutch. The car's got a 3-speed manual, by the way. 313 rear gear. It's a 302 two-barrel car, but it runs really strong. The 73 models have 1 point less compression than the 71 and 72, and I'd like to see what the earlier ones run like, because even with lower compression, this thing is a beast. It'll make one crazy one-tire fire, that's for sure, and I'll put a link to that in the description if you haven't seen it yet. But the reason the thing was given to me for free, I know the car looks kind of clean. There's a reason why this tarp's on it. It used to be a vinyl top car. Yeah. That's some of the worst roof rot I think I've ever seen. But beggars can't be choosers. It is a free, drivable 73 Mustang. She wasn't drivable when I got her, though. I had to do that. I've documented most of the work that I've done to this car on my channel. It's got a boat gas tank in it right now. I've had to put a different factory style carburetor on it to get it running. But honestly, that was about it. Just put some clean fuel and a battery to it and fix the carburetor problem that some jackass caused by trying to rob parts off of it, and she's ready to roll again. Alright, let's move on to the next ride.
Alright folks, you're not going to believe this, but I'm not even halfway through with the video yet and my camera battery died on me. No worries though, we're going to keep rolling with the phone and finish the video. For those of you that are familiar with my channel already, you'll recognize this car. I've been working on it for a while now. It used to be a rusty old red Ford sedan. It's still a rusty old Ford sedan. It's just a police car clone now. It is kind of rotted out on the inside. If I walk over here and open the door, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. I'm working on some makeshift floorboards for it. I've cut the rest of the rod out. One thing this car has got going for it that is not cool is the motor's locked up. And come on. Alright, there we go. Quick cut while I was getting the hood open. It's just an old integrated head, log intake, 144 I believe. Nothing real special here. Trying to get it unlocked so I don't have to go to the trouble to put a new motor in the car, but if I can't unlock this locked up engine, then I'll end up putting a small V8 in there, probably a 5.0 out of a wrecked Mustang, because those are cheap and easy to come by. It's getting surprisingly hard to find good old 260s and 289s and stuff like that. Paid just a couple $100 for this car. Bought it from a friend of mine that runs a bit of a private scrapyard full of old cars. That's another thing that we're going to be looking at here on the channel sometime soon. I'll be driving over to Bernie Glenn's house in the green Roadrunner over there and checking out a junkyard full of old classic cars. And I know a couple other places around here that are kind of lots full of hidden gems that we'll be taking looks at as well. So we got that in store. Alright, moving on to one of my trucks now. This is a 78 long bed, big block, 4-wheel drive Ford F100. It's a pretty cool old truck. It was given to me for free by the same guy that gave me the Cutlass and the Mustang. Really appreciate all the stuff you gave me, Dewey. You know, I've mentioned it a billion times. I can't mention it enough though. The truck has got the original paint from what I can tell. It's got a decent patina going too, so my plan was to honestly just put a good matte clear coat on the thing. It's in decent shape in here. I cleaned it up when I first bought it. I mean, got it, not bought it. Used to buying vehicles, not used to having it handed to me. Anyhow, the story on this truck is it used to belong to a kid who was evidently a firefighter, based on the window stickers on the back window of the truck. And he paid to have the transmission rebuilt sometime in the early 90s. Shortly after that, he blew the motor up in the truck, and it used to be a 464 barrel, and Dewey, the guy that gave me the truck, gave me this 351 2-barrel here on the floor. I'm trying to get a good look at it for you. It's a decent motor. Not going to be quite as much of a beast as the 464 barrel, but I've heard the 351Ms are good big blocks. You never know, I might put a blower on there and some crazy tires and turn it into a pulling truck or a mud truck or something crazy like that. But I really doubt it. I like to keep my old four-wheel drive stock. It's got a really cool classic faded look to it with that old camper shell up there and the old wagon wheels. I want to keep it looking just like it does after I get the motor in it. Next truck I want to show you guys is this 86 GMC Jimmy that I picked up dirt cheap off Craigslist. I only paid $700 for this truck, and I've got less than $1,000 in it with all the stuff that I've done to it. The kid that was selling the thing told me that the motor was bad and four-wheel drive worked good in it, and it turned out to be the opposite. After I got the thing, I realized that there wasn't too much wrong with the motor, and four-wheel drive wasn't functioning. Luckily, that was a quick fix. I put a nice set of worn locking hubs in the truck. It only set me back $120, and got four-wheel drive working again, and I drove the thing until the starter quit. And I've kind of been in financial dire straits ever since my dog Jessie died, and haven't been able to afford to do a lot of stuff. I've got the gauge panel cover out of the truck right now too because it needs a headlight switch. Parts up there, but got tons of Cutlass parts inside of it, and on the hood too. One more thing I wanted to show you guys while we were in there. The truck used to be red and white, and you can see the red and the white there. Top was white, and it was red with a white two-tone stripe. I'm going to repaint it just like factory. I was intending to do it the year that I got the truck, but you know how life just piles up on you. I painted the grill and painted the wheels and touched up a couple of rust spots. It's got a really cheap semi-gloss black paint job on it right now. See if I can get the hood open with all these parts on it, because it's got a... Looks like a squirrel's been up here chewing nuts on my intake. That's fine as long as he's not chewing my truck. Anyways, this is a GM crate replacement 350. What most people would, I think, refer to as a Target Master. It's a center bolt 3 valve cover 350, and it's got a 4-barrel carb on it. Cheap little Holly vacuum secondary, which is my favorite kind of carb. They're probably the best performance carb for the money. You get them for under $300 if you buy the 600. And the truck runs pretty good. Well, I mean, it runs reliably. It makes a lot of blow-by, and it runs really slow, to be honest, for a V8 truck, so I'm assuming that it's got bad rigs. What I plan to do about that is just run really thick oil in it and drive it till it quits. Then I'll think about putting an engine in it. In the meantime, 4-wheel low has all the power that I need for it. Alright, next truck I want to show you guys is the 73 Ford F100 here. It's an engine swap project that my buddy Dewey was in the middle of when he had to get rid of a lot of his assets and move away from his home. It used to be a 6-cylinder automatic pickup truck, and right now it's got a 351 Windsor and better transmission from what he told me, that are both from out of the same van. And I've got the front end, and I've got all the parts that go on the truck. And I kind of like the wheels that are on it. You know, curse me for having cheap taste, but I like the old school wagon wheels. I like the patina the truck's got going on too. It's the original color, original paint job. I love it when I see an old vehicle like this that somebody hasn't mucked up with a cheap paint job. And that's ironic because that's how I make my living, is mucking up old cars with cheap paint jobs. Yeah, the engine and transmission are bolted into this thing. The drive shaft isn't hooked up, but that's no worries because I've got a bunch of different size drive shafts, and I'm sure I've got the right one for it somewhere. So you guys will probably see me tooling around in this thing in a year or two. Maybe less, maybe more, no telling. By the way, that's the rear glass for the Cutlass sitting up here. I took it out of the back of the car just to paint the thing. Paint the package tray, that is. Anyway, that's enough trucks for right now. Let's get back to the cars. Oh, by the way, before we go, this old Land Cruiser right here belongs to a buddy of mine. I started doing a little bit of cleanup and body work and stuff to it for him, and then we realized it's got some pretty bad frame rot right next to one of the body mounts. And I don't have a welder yet, but I will sometime soon, and then I'll be able to fix it for him. Moving on to cars, though, like I said, here's my 74 Plymouth Valiant Slant 6 sedan. I picked this thing up for dirt cheap from the same guy that I bought the old Ford cop car from. And the coolest part about this car is it's got a clutch, so that means it's not quite as slow as it would be if it was an automatic. The quick story on this one is it used to be my friend's mom's car back in the 80s. She drove the thing for several years until it started to get rusty and develop a lot of electrical problems. And, you know, the floor is rotten out of it, combined with a lot of weird light problems and charging issues and things like that going on. She just decided to park it. And it sat in my friend's junkyard for several years, where a couple of people ended up buying parts off of it and things like that. The carburetor got bought off of it. A lot of the little electrical boxes got bought off of it. The radiator and the gas tank both got bought off of it. And I paid my buddy just a couple $100s for the thing. And, you know, like the crazy mechanic said from the basement in Mad Max, I did it, you know, a piece from here, a piece from there, a little bit at a time. It's a pretty cool car to cruise around in. I've only taken it up and down the road a few times. Yeah, the interior is in pretty good shape for an older car. A lot of the running gear is in pretty good shape, except for the clutch. The clutch isn't as bad as the Cutlass, but it's getting kind of close, if you know what I mean. It's up at the top. I'd like to find a bumper and a taillight for it at some point. It's missing a passenger side taillight if you haven't seen my other videos, and obviously you can see it's missing that bumper right there. I've got pipe dreams about possibly putting a 4-barrel manifold and a split header on the thing and turbocharging it. I've seen a lot of cars on YouTube here that run really good, specifically Slant 6 turbo builds. That's what I was talking about. Like I said, I only took it down the road a couple of times myself, test drives, to make sure that everything was working right up at speed. But we have used it a lot in the woods and around the yard here. I practiced getting sideways with it before I got the Mustang. The Mustang gets loose a lot easier than this thing does. But that's about what I do with this car. I'll give you guys a quick look inside and under the hood before we move on. Like I said before, the interior is in decent shape. Ripped up on the driver's seat over there a little bit, but that's my definition of decent. Alright, this hood can be a little hard to operate with one hand. There we go. Thanks for being cooperative today. Oh yeah, I just about forgot until now. It got down into the teens a couple of weeks ago, and I was assuming that this nasty concoction of stop leak and old water that I had in here would not freeze up overnight, despite the fact that it was getting frigidly cold, and my luck didn't play out so well. She popped out a freeze plug, and I know it's kind of corroded on the back there, but it's not pitted too horribly. I'm gonna tap this one back into the block and JB weld it. I don't know if you guys can see the open hole or not. Foam quality's probably not too great in the dark, but yeah, I was gonna do a little Australia Day video with the Valiant here, because for those of you guys who don't know, this is one of the muscle car bodies that kind of interchanges across the seas. This thing was popular worldwide, and I know some of you American dudes are probably laughing at me for calling this a muscle car, but hey, if a new four-door Charger is a muscle car, then why can't this be? Well, that's a quick rundown of the Valiant. Now we're going to move on to one of my other cars, probably going to be the 72 Fury. I've actually got a couple of cars that aren't here right now. One's a 68 Dodge Coronet race car project with a 10-point cage that's had a lot of metal replacement done. And another one is a 74, 75 Triumph Spitfire. It's another freebie that is completely rotted out, no floorboards left in it at all. It mysteriously stopped running about 20, 30 years ago, if I remember correctly, and has just been sitting in somebody's backyard ever since then. So I'm really looking forward to finding out what stopped that car from running all that long time ago and possibly turning it into a yard cart, just like this thing. Alright guys, next car I want to show off is the 72 Plymouth Fury 3 that I bought off Craigslist a couple years back. It's a 400 big block. It's got a 373 rear gear with the towing package. It's a limited slip differential, and it has a transmission cooler, and it came with heavy duty shocks, which I'm sure are long worn out and replaced. In fact, I remember the air shocks are in the rear now, so yeah. Definitely doesn't have the original shocks up front, and they'd be worn out by now anyway. But this car is the car that I've paid the most out of for any vehicle that I've ever bought, and it's only $1,000. So there you have it. I'm an extremely low budget hot rodder. When I realized that somebody was selling a old school big block car for, you know, $1,000, I had to jump on the thing. It's kind of a pig. It's kind of a heavy old beast. It's a 4,200 pound car. It's the Chrysler C-body platform, which is actually a giant unibody with the enlarged front K-frames, just like the ones that's on the B and the E bodies and the A bodies and stuff like that. No hood springs right now. I borrowed the carb off of this thing to see if I could get a 4-barrel going on the Mustang with an adapter. That didn't work out too well. I was having major vacuum leaks. As you guys could probably see from the brief look in there, I cleaned the motor up and repainted it Chrysler blue. And my dash carpet's on the floor again. Great. Yeah, this car's pretty solid. There's the box from where I bought the brand new carb. Had to get a low profile filter to go on it. After I bought this thing, I was driving it almost every day until reverse quit. And it's just been sitting here because I can't afford a transmission rebuild. The guy that primed the car did this. I don't have a better fix, so I'm going to leave it like that. There's some sheet metal rot down here in the trunk, but the frame rails are solid. Shackle boxes are solid. Car drives good. There we go. Yeah, I paid $1,000 for this car for the express purpose of doing burnouts. At the time, my Satellite had a 273 small block with a 276 rear gear and a slushy old transmission that needed a rebuild. And like a young fool, instead of putting money into the car I already had, I bought another one. But that's alright. Me and Dad have been talking about stuff to do with this car for a while. I painted the stripes on the hood, by the way. It was just gray primer when I got it. For some reason, me and Dad have been tossing around the idea of painting the thing flat black and cutting a hole in the hood, whether that be for a tunnel ram or a supercharger. Probably a tunnel ram, considering my budget. But that's the rundown on the Fury here. That's an old dog pen, in case you guys are wondering. My dad built it a long time ago. Tropical type vines that grow around here in the summertime come and take it over in the summer and die on it in the winter. That's how stuff works around here. It's extremely hot in the summer and extremely cold in the winter. Alright, we'll move on to the next ride. Thanks for being patient. Alrighty, got a couple more trucks I want to show you down here. Well, I reckon this ain't a truck, it's a Jeep. This 76 CJ5 right here used to belong to my grandpa, and it's pretty fitting that it's sitting under a shelter that my grandpa built. He built this old barn thing here for putting cow and chickens and stuff like that in. I was about to say cows, but we only had one cow. And what's wrong with this Jeep is donut gasket, and that's literally it. I finally got the thing running on its own gas tank when we had to park it. The donut gasket got really bad. Oh, damn. Rats chewing up my nice Mexican blanket. Oh well, shit happens. Put that in the floor so they don't get the seat nasty. There we go. Yeah, rats and spiders are taking over Grandpa's Jeep while it's waiting to be fixed. Got a nice set of 33s on it. They don't make them like that anymore. That's the old Grand Prix RVT or Groundhog style tire. They're both basically the same. They just started getting remade by the Groundhog guys for a while, and they quit doing them for some reason. They're not holding air on this side, but they're holding air on that side. That's okay though. You pump them back up and they come back to life. They've been doing that for years. Those tires are older than I am. So what the goals are with this old Jeep is to basically just fix the donut gasket in it and come back and do a revival on it. All the thing's going to need is some fresh fuel and a battery. It's got a new starter on it and a new water pump and a lot of other little goodies on it. I did kind of a quickie rebuild on the car, just replaced the needle and seat and some gaskets and stuff like that. You know, the major stuff that was causing fuel to spray everywhere. But I reckon we'll take a quick look under the hood, make sure it's not inhabited. Oh boy, good job, Eric. You left the air cleaner off of it. Sorry, Papa, didn't mean to leave your Jeep in such a state of disrepair. And look, you can see the rate that it was consuming fuel filters at one time. So there we go. Got a nice old Jeep. It's got some rust holes in it. The clutch is just about at the top, just like the Valiant, but I don't drive this thing hard like I drive my cars. I'm super easy on it. I idle everywhere, hardly ever touch the gas pedal. Not even for hills. Just idles right uphill and low. Alrighty, let's move straight on to this Trailduster here. This was my first four-wheel drive. used to belong to a couple different people around here. It got passed on from one young guy to, you know, the next, and it got the ever-loving crap beat out of it. You can see that it's got 2/3 of a winch bumper, and when a truck's got 2/3 of a winch bumper on it, that's never a good sign. The dude that gave this truck to me used to use it to run over trees, and that's no joke. You can probably tell it's a little roughed up. Unfortunately, due to just some pure bad luck, mainly falling trees, almost all the glass is broken out of this side. And this is a 74 model Trailduster. My bag completely deteriorated. This is a 74 model Trailduster, which means that this window frame right here is made into the top and not made onto the door. And it is pretty much impossible to find a top for this truck. So what I've got there is a rusted out pattern for refabrication, basically, because I'm not going to find another one. And this truck ran and drove when the friend of my dad gave it to me. If you're watching this video, thanks a lot, Brian. I really appreciate you giving me my first four-wheel drive. I had tons of fun and tons of memories in this truck, driving down into the woods with my friends in it, with the top on in the winter, top off in the summer. It was really cool to have a Mopar four-wheel drive. You know, my dad's buddy Brian saw that I was fixing up my 68 Coronet, which eventually turned into my race car project, and he was having to move to the beach at the time, and basically just gave me this thing. He tried to sell it for a little while beforehand, and nobody wanted to pay him what he was asking for it. A lot of people didn't realize just how rare an old Trailduster is. The reason it's quit on me is transmission, I'm assuming. In fact, I'm just about sure. It was acting like it was the transmission, because these old, I think it's a NP, new process transfer case, but somebody told me that the transfer case in this truck just about never goes out. But yeah, I am planning on fixing this truck. I know it's a total pig, but it's a rare truck with a lot of sentimental value, and I'm going to do the metal work that it needs and try to find a winch bumper that looks similar to the one that was on there before it got, you know, metal fatigued off. What basically happened is it got pulled back and forth a million times until it snapped off like the pull tab on a tin can. Alrighty, thanks for being patient once again. Let's move on to what else I got. Alright, last project car I want to show you guys for today is my daily driver. It's a 68 Plymouth Satellite. It's kind of a Roadrunner clone. It's got Roadrunner stickers and a 6-pack hood and stuff like that. Well, 6-pack scoop on the stock hood. I've done a lot of work to this car myself. I had some help from friends here and there. You know, wouldn't have known anything about how to turn wrenches if it weren't for my dad starting me off. And my buddy Bernie, who I bought the old Ford cop car from, helped put the cam in there for me, because I, you know, wasn't real experienced with a valve spring compressor and a lot of other things like that. My buddy Tommy let me use his lift and a lot of tools, and helped me out with a lot of advice too. Tommy's Blazer's under that tarp there waiting on a paint job, by the way. But I've been driving this car, using it as my main transportation for the last 8 years, ever since I got my license. I got my license a little late, so don't try to judge that on how old I am. But she runs pretty strong. When I first got it, it was a 273, 276 rear gear car, like I said earlier, with a sloppy old automatic that needed a rebuild. And first thing we did for it that really helped it out a lot was to rebuild the transmission, and then not long after that we swapped from the 276 rear gear to the 355, and that was really a lot of fun, to be honest, driving the car with the small motor and the lower gear and the rebuilt transmission. And it lasted for a few years before the 273 started to smoke kind of bad when you got on the gas mainly, and it was knocking a little bit when it was cold, but not so much when it would warm up. in the years of driving the car with the 273 in it, I did a lot of cool little modifications to it, like roller rockers and MSD, and I experimented with cold air intakes here and there because I had a nicer hood at the time that I didn't want to cut a hole in. But the thing runs a lot better with the 360 that's in it now. It's got a cam from Hughes engines. I'll go ahead and pop the hood. Hooker headers, nice aluminum air gap intake, aluminum radiator. The cam sounds sweet. I'll try to start the thing up for you in a little bit, but it's been sitting over winter. I haven't been going anywhere lately. I cut that hole for the hood scoop myself, by the way. Just screwed on there. Put a huge air filter element on there so that, you know, it's actually necessary looking. Got an old seat cover in here from Walmart. Looks like it took a minute for the camera to readjust. The back seat's in decent shape. So the goal for this car is to maybe someday clean up the paint and body work. I'm not too sure about that because, you know, whenever you've got a nice car, some deer likes to come run into the side of it and crunch your fender up. Plus, I kind of like the look that it's starting to develop. The car was a lot cleaner when I first started driving it, and the look has deteriorated a little bit over the years. Some of the rust is starting to come back through, and yeah, that's a dent on the quarter panel. Some blind old man sideswiped me at an intersection, and the police, you know, said that it was his fault on the accident statement or whatever it was, and his insurance company didn't want to pay for it. So yeah, to sum it up, my nice old car got crunched a little bit. I didn't get reimbursed in any way, shape, or form, and just ended up having to come home and pound the stuff out. You know, quarter panels for this car are really expensive, and despite the fact that I do paint and body work, as you can tell, I don't have the time to do my own projects when I'm working on so many of my other customers' cars. Speaking of which, I might show you guys what I got in my spray booth in a little bit. That depends. I'm going to try and get this car started because I haven't started it in a while, and I think, you know, getting to hear that beefy cam and Flowmasters and V8 revving and all that good stuff might be a nice little send-off for the video. We'll see what happens. I'll get back to you in a moment. Yeah, almost forgot. Secondary plan with this car. Need to fill you guys in a little bit. Shortly after I put the motor in the car with help from Bernie and Tommy, I blew both head gaskets in the thing, and you could equate that to a lead foot, or you could equate that to a little bit of mileage on the engine, but either way, it happened, and my buddy Chuck came through for me with a nice set of head gaskets that I was really lucky to be able to put on the car for free at the time and get myself going back on the road. But what I didn't realize I was doing at the time was lowering my compression by quite a bit. When you do a compression test on this car, hot with the throttle blades open, it should be, excuse me, this engine, not this car, hot with the throttle blades open, it should be about 170, 160 PSI, something like that. Right now I'm running 130 hot with the throttle blades open, and it's all dead even on every cylinder, exact same number, so that's encouraging. At least my rings aren't bad, and I don't have another head gasket leak, but I could tell after I put new head gaskets in the thing that I detuned it, and that's what we're going to be doing, is putting new head gaskets, push rods, lifters, and head bolts in the motor, trying to get all my valve train lift back and get all my compression back and get me back to what power level I'm supposed to be at. The guys from Hughes Engines told me that this engine with this cam and a good intake, good set of headers is usually plus 400 horsepower, and I don't doubt that because I've outran a couple of guys in newer model Corvettes with it, and one guy in one of those Mercedes hardtop coupes, you know, chomping up expensive cars with a car that I got out of a junkyard when I was younger. I'll put some pics up of it when I got it, by the way, so you can see what the thing looked like when I first picked her up. Thanks again for the sweet car, Dad. Really appreciate it. I've taken good care of it all these years. Alright guys, one of the last vehicles I want to show you here is this old work van. It's not terribly interesting at first glance, but it is part of the project goals. It used to be an installation van for our shop. We run a little carpet installation and sales service in town, and this thing was one of our extra vehicles that we had, and it's a 5.9 Magnum van, and that's the same kind of motor that I've got over there in the green car. It's a good, fairly high compression, small block Mopar engine that they came out with from 93 to 2003, if I remember correctly. And it's basically just a fuel injected 360 with a slightly different valve train setup. And the heads on it are really good. Like I said, it's decent compression. It's 9-to-1 compression from the factory, and the heads that come on it flow really good, and I mean really good. They flow better than the factory 340 heads from back in the day. And that's what this thing's sitting around here for. It's a 5.9 Magnum, just like the one that I swapped into my car, but it hasn't been canned and all that stuff. And what I'm planning on doing with this thing is supercharging it. I'm probably going to keep the stock cam, maybe change cam, I'm not sure exactly yet. It depends. I'm going to have to do some research into the numbers and stuff on it, but I have already looked around, and you can get a blower intake for these motors for $700, and a friend of mine has a few blowers for sale, the guy that I bought the old Ford from up there. I'm going to talk to him about grabbing one of those things, hopefully for a good deal. We'll see what happens. Anywho, that's what this wreck is sitting here for, just for a spare engine. I got the thing running and tried to sell it at one point, but nobody wants to buy it for what it's worth. Can't sell the thing for $2,000 despite the fact that it's got a functional handicap lift, and you know, the air conditioning doesn't work, but it could probably be made to work easily. Anywho, on to the next one. And here we are. That's the last thing that I wanted to show you guys. That's one of my main channel goals right here, is to put this bottle of nitrous and a cheap little NOS sniper kit that I've got on some kind of car. It's probably going to end up being a 4-barrel unless I buy a different fogger plate or I get crazy and tap the intake on the Valiant. But it's just a cheap kit. I've got jets that are good for 100, 125, and 150 shot. I would kind of like to play around with a 50 shot to start with, but I've heard that that's, you know, not really worth messing with, and you're going to want to move up right afterwards. But at some point in the channel's future, we're going to hook this thing up to a car and burn some tires. Hopefully not burn some piston rings. We'll see. Stick around for the results. Alright guys, thanks a million for sticking around to the end of the video, and thanks a million more for subscribing to the channel to begin with. That's what this video was all about, was just coming on to say thanks and to give you guys an idea of what I'm trying to do here with my channel. I'm just working on a bunch of old cars and stuff like that. Occasionally posting some albums or video game stuff. I used to post a lot more game stuff than I do now. I'm not planning on stopping. In fact, I would like to finish up at least clearing Jeep's territory and Mad Max. And I've probably got some clips from Skyrim VR coming up soon too, so look forward to that if you're here for the video games. And if you're here for the cars, look forward to all kinds of chaos, you know, with this and much other crazy stuff to come. Thanks a million for watching, guys. Have a good one. Well, check it out, guys. Double OF. Out of fuel. That's how you know I'm cheap.